If there's any one name associated with helping the disadvantaged, that name is the Salvation Army. Today we're going to be looking at that organization's life and service in Austin, so please join us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, welcoming you to this edition of the program. Recently, the Austin American Statesman had a feature story about how Austin helps its homeless. And not surprisingly, the organization that received a good bit of play in that was the Salvation Army. It's one that nationally has been known for many years and locally has been working in our midst as well. And today we're privileged to have leadership from the Salvation Army, beginning with Major Robert Taylor.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you here and in Austin as well.
Thank you, Richard. We're glad to be here.
And Karen Dix, who is the Public Relations Director. And Karen, you've been on our show before, but we're glad to have you again.
Thank you.
You keep coming back.
I do. It's great.
And would like to just have you tell us a little bit. You're relatively new in the city, aren't you, Major?
Yes, we've been here now approximately 3 months. We came toward the end of June. But we're not really new to the area. We were stationed in San Antonio for 4 years. Went from there to Birmingham, Alabama, and then back to Texas.
I see. So how do you feel about being back in Texas?
I love it.
Do you?
Yes.
Were you here from Texas originally?
Oklahoma City is my home, and I'm glad to be back west of the Mississippi.
I gotcha. All right. Well, I think that as you've worked with the Army and these other places, do you do the same thing from one place to the other, the same program from in each city?
Well, it depends on the appointment that they send you to. Now, this appointment will be basically the same as the last two. Prior to that, I was served at the divisional headquarters in Washington, D.C. as divisional secretary, handling property and insurance and a lot of paperwork.
Oh, I see.
So this type of an appointment is really more rewarding than that.
Okay. Well, for folks who are not aware of particularly how the Salvation Army services homeless people, let's start with that, and before we're done we'll look at the little broader picture, but that's been our focus over the last couple of weeks since that article in the paper came out. What is there that the Salvation Army does in relation to the homeless that's unique and nobody else is doing?
I'll let Karen answer that. She is really more familiar with what the local scene here than I
Okay,
am.
good.
One thing that's unique is we're the only overnight shelter for the homeless. We have 244 beds that are free to stay in for homeless men, women, and families. And the goals for the Salvation Army is to move folks from homelessness to independence. And we do that first by meeting that basic need. We have to be realistic to say folks can't go out and looking for jobs and housing if they haven't had a meal, if they haven't had a shower, if they don't have clean clothes. So we're first going to meet that basic need, and then we're going to focus on some of the other issues.
Okay, so you start with where the immediate need is and then seek to be in continuing relationship with folks to expand out from that?
Right, and we put a lot of the responsibility back on the individuals also. Any homeless man or woman can come into our facility and stay with us for 7 days. If they would like to stay any longer, they have to meet with a social worker and come up with a plan. And that plan may mean that they want to look for a job, that they want to get assistance with housing. So it's just moving towards that self-sufficiency. With our families, they can come in and they usually can stay a little longer because they kind of show up as a package deal. You have a mom and children who show up on our doorstep, and so we immediately need to help them as a whole.
Now, I understand that one of the policies that you follow is that you separate the men and the women, and so if you've got a family where the father is there, then they have to stay in separate quarters?
Right, but it's just for when it's time to sleep. And the reason we do that is our high occupancy in our family dormitory. For the past 2.5 years, we've been over 100% full in that dorm, and we do it only because of space. So the father, significant other, can be with the family for all the meals, anytime if they're working on schoolwork, any other event, but when it's time to sleep, we have the men sleep up in the men's dormitory because of space. So if, for instance, at 11 o'clock, if a mom and an infant shows up at our door and we have a bed, we'd like to put them in.
I see. Okay. Well, I'd like to go back, if I could, Major, to how Austin, the services offered here, as Karen describes it in relation to the homeless, is that is pretty typical of what the Salvation Army does in terms of the shelter and then working with them to find folks their work situation. And
Yeah, Austin is really pretty typical as far as what services that we offer and how we try to meet that need. Of course, the Army is very flexible, so that in any given community we can try to meet the need of whatever that community is. But in my experience, the homelessness situation is really no different here than it is anywhere else. It seems to be a little more politicized here than in some other cities. But you still have the basic needs here that you find in San Antonio and Birmingham and other places.
let me ask you about one of the stories or parts of that story that was in the article that had a good bit to do with whether Austin was going to go in the direction of Orlando, Florida, that has a shelter, that has public funds to support it as well as private support in other ways. That has been, I understand, put on hold for now, but what's your feeling about how that would or would not meet the need that you see in the city?
Well, there's no question that we need additional bed space, especially in the area that Karen has mentioned in the families, women and children. We're not too often 100% with our single men except during the cold winter months.
I see.
But the biggest need is in that area of families and transitional housing. Being new, I'm not really up to speed on exactly what the homeless campus would do. So I really don't have a view on that at this point. But I do know that the Salvation Army recognizes some needs, and we are moving ahead to try to meet those needs as best we can.
I see. But what's your feeling about that campus idea?
We are keeping an open dialogue with homeless, different groups that we work with, and we really want to make sure that we are going to meet that need. And what we really see as a big need now is not only the women and children, but we also see it with substance abuse programs, affordable housing, programs for the mentally ill, detox center, many of the same points that were brought up in the article to say, if all these individuals come to us, where can we refer them to so they can get the help? Because many choose they want the help, and what can we do when we get them? Like Major Taylor mentioned, we do often have space in our men's dorm, but we do have guidelines that go with that. And so sometimes people choose not to stay with us because of those guidelines.
Now, what are some of those guidelines?
They are that they need to check in between 5 and 7 in the evening. There's no drinking or smoking at the facility. They need to be in bed by 10:30. They need to be up by 5 in the morning. Breakfast is at 5:30. And then they need to be out of our facility by 7 in the morning unless they're participating in one of our classes that we offer there or have a meeting with a social worker. Because our kind of view is that they're up, they're ready, they're out looking for jobs, meeting appointments, working on different tasks.
So you think that it's possible that because you do have these kinds of requirements that some would consider to be kind of, if just the hours, for instance, apart from the substance abuse, that might keep your numbers from being as much as they might be otherwise?
Definitely, because I think, a lot of folks want their own freedom, which is their choice.
Yeah.
But I know in the past we used to have an area open. This was prior to 1992 where folks could come in at any time.
Right.
And it was not very effective. It was not conducive to getting up in the morning ready to work and have a productive day. And so that's why we chose to follow the policies that we do now.
I think one of the things, too, is that the Salvation Army has, all over the years, been associated with dealing with those who had drinking problems and were addicted in one way or the other. And how much of that is part of your program here in Austin?
Well, we have an adult rehabilitation center out on South Congress that has a capacity of about 100, and this is for people who recognize that they do have a problem and that they want to try to do something about it, and so they go there. It's a live-in work therapy type program. You may see our big white trucks running around town picking up furniture and clothing and knickknacks and so forth. That's what this program is about, and that's how it's funded. And so it's a very extensive program. They receive a lot of counseling, a lot of spiritual advice, and it's been very successful in getting men off of their alcoholism or drug habit.
So that's where you really focus and specialize your ministry at that place.
That's right.
And is that separately organized or separately incorporated, or?
Well, it's not separately incorporated, but Captain Leon White is the commanding officer for that particular program, and
I see.
it does work sort of separately from what we do downtown.
And we keep it a little separate just because of the funding, where it's solely supported from the thrift stores. The Salvation Army Social Service Center and Community Center is funded by other resources, such as,
The rehabilitation, you said, is funded by what again?
solely from the sales of the items at the thrift stores.
I see, okay. And you've got those thrift stores. Whereabouts are those?
We have 3 in Austin. One is at the Capitol Plaza off I-35. One is off South Lamar, fairly close to Barton Springs. And another one is at the Rehab Center, South Congress and Ben White.
I see. So that enables that organization to have a flow of funds coming in that also meet your needs in regard to those thrift items.
That's correct.
Well, that's helpful to know. And as far as the funding for what you're doing downtown, and tell us again exactly where the Army's headquarters are there.
Okay.
I'll let you tell them.
We're located at 501 East 8th Street.
Uh-huh.
The front of the facility is at the corner of 8th and Netchess.
Okay.
We're a 3-story brown brick building.
Okay. Major, you've only been here 3 months.
I know.
so-
I know where the parking lot is.
Okay. We won't ask you give you a geography lesson on the city otherwise.
I know what our box number is, if that'll help.
Well, we're about to run out of time on the first half of the show here, but when we come back to the second half, I want us to look at the facilities issue, because I know you're seeking to expand. I also know that when the original decision was made some years ago to locate the Army where it is at the corner of, once again,
8th and Netchess.
there was some controversy about that. And there's been controversy about the camping ban recently. And so I think that we're going to have a little controversial topics to talk about as we move into that second half. But just before we finish now, I want to say that I think it's the religious motivation, the spiritual motivation that is built into your title.
That's correct.
And we want to hear about that too, because you wouldn't be doing the work that you are, and I'm sure, Karen, you wouldn't be either without that kind of impetus. So we're going to ask you folks to stay with us just for another minute while we take a break, and then we'll be back on Austin Faith Dialogue. Hi again on Austin Faith Dialogue, where today we are focusing upon the Salvation Army and its work here in Austin. And we have Major Taylor, who is the new area commander that's just arrived, and we have Karen Dix, who does public relations. Let's go back to just the thing that I've touched on at the end of the first half, the controversy that surrounded the original location of the Salvation Army downtown. Now, that's past history, but there's still feeling about I guess the merchants on 6th Street and others who are in businesses downtown. Give us an update on that.
Well, we work really closely with the Downtown Alliance, and we have been for several years. We've been at this location since 1988, and there was a lot of controversy when we went there. I think a big concern was by having our facility there, we're going to attract everyone in town. People are going to feel uncomfortable coming to our facility. It's going to be dirty. And the Salvation Army's really made an effort to keep that whole block area very clean. People come in if they have programs. There's no loitering around our facility. So we've really made an effort. And it's a good location. It's right off I-35, and that's a thoroughfare for many individuals. It's close to some bus routes. So we've really got to think of the population we're serving, and can they get to us, and can it be accessible versus being way out of town where they can't get to.
Yeah. Same controversy surrounding this proposed campus. It's not in my backyard. That's right. Idea.
And I think it's always a fear. You don't know what's going to come with it. And that's why we do have security and guidelines to follow, so things do stay in order.
Yeah. So what's your plan for expansion? What do you hope to have happen?
Well,
there?
we have purchased some lots just across the alley so that we have that half of the block.
That's south of your facility?
That's correct. And our plans is to expand eventually on there. Now, we don't have any formulated plans as to exactly what that building will be like. We have some ideas of things that we're going to need to include in it, like transitional housing. We need new offices. Since the Army built this building in 1988, we're probably about 4 times as large as in the administrative staff. And so we're really have people sitting in corners and in each other's lap practically. And so that's one of the needs that we have. But it would include a place for women and children. One of the really things that I think we need in Austin is to separate the men from the women so that we can provide a place for a family to come and stay together rather than be separated at night.
Mm-hmm. So your transitional housing would accommodate that need?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your relationship to the other caregivers in town is a key one. I mean, this article in the paper was saying you've got the Foundation for the Homeless, you've got Caritas that's been around for a long time, you've got a number of other agencies that are addressing comparable issues. So what do you do to, multiply your effect by cooperating with these folks?
Well, what I've seen in the last several years is there's come down, in a sense, a mandate for more collaboration. It's come from funding sources that'll say you will receive this funding if you're working with other organizations, putting in grants that come together. And we have just completed our first year of a very successful 3-year grant from HUD called our Passages Program.
Okay.
And this is where we work with 6 other organizations in Austin that deal with the homeless and needy and women and children, and it's a long-term case management plan. Every week, leaders from the 6 other agencies meet at the Salvation Army. There's case managers, there's counselors, they all get together, they discuss their caseloads, and what we're trying to do is, so if the individuals need to use each of these services, we have a point of contact. And it's been very effective because if we're dealing with them in Center for Battered, or we're dealing with them, they can talk, we can decide what the best plan of action is. Because it is sometimes very frustrating for individuals going to different organizations. But here we can also monitor the individuals and making sure that they're staying on their plan. So I see more and more collaboration. One day we wrote a list and we had more than 40 organizations that we deal with in a given year or more.
So the 6, though, that you're working with on Passages,
They're Center for Battered Women,
okay.
Youth Options, Foundation for the Homeless, Hobo,
Caritas.
Caritas,
Uh-huh.
and there's one more, Austin Families.
Ah, very good.
Let's carry that.
I'm giving you all memory tests here tonight. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so the fact that you've got this collaboration going on, I mean, that article, by the way, in the paper made it sound like there was not too much collaboration going on.
Right, and it surprised me a little because there really is. And you know, our staff's very busy, just like staff at every other nonprofit. They've got extreme high caseloads, but they really work together and share ideas, because the bottom goal with all these organizations is to help those that are in need.
Mm-hmm.
That's our bottom line mission.
Yeah. Well, I would think, Major, coming to Austin, that you would be aware of not only the interface with these private folks, but with the human services group of the state. But what are your state connections?
Well, our divisional headquarters office is in Dallas, and of course that's where most of the interfacing with state people take place. But we work wherever we can with these people.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we work with mainly the agencies right here in the Austin area.
The human services, the county, the city, and the Texas Department of Human Services.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, what do you do with them? How does that work?
Well, we have dialogues, we have meetings together. A lot of times they will call us and say, you know, what services do you offer? We had a client come in, what do we need to do? And part of my job and some of our other staff is to go out and educate. We set up meetings with different agencies. In fact, right now we're just getting ready to kick off our big holiday Christmas assistance program. We've had a staff member that's called 30-plus agencies in Austin to say, we have this assistance program. Do you have clients that may be in need? If you do, we'll send you information about it.
Oh, really?
So we really see, we want to share resources.
This is money going looking for clients, in a sense.
Well, and very
That's
much
different.
because we have the community out there that supports many of our holiday programs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would rather the agencies who really know these clients well, if they have families or individuals that are going to need things for the holidays and we have our guidelines, refer them to us and we can work with them.
Yeah. I need to mention a couple other things. One that also made the news a good bit, and maybe this happened before you came, Major, about the tornado up in Jarrell and how the Salvation Army took leadership in providing some help there.
Yeah, the tornado happened just before we got here. I think most of the work was being done prior to our coming, but we were still doing some work up there, and well, I think we've pretty well completed that now.
What did you do?
Well,
Maybe Karen can answer that better than I can because I wasn't here.
Right,
I know
right.
that we did the basic services at the Salvation Army officers at that time of housing and feeding and assisting, giving spiritual counseling as well.
You brought folks
Some
here
of
to Austin from there, you mean?
from all over this state of Texas came in to assist in that area.
and we went up there to Jarrell within 4 hours after the tornado hit. We have our emergency canteen, which is a mobile kitchen, and that's a part of the Salvation Army's disaster services. The Austin one went straight up there. I went there the Wednesday after it hit. It happened on the Tuesday night. I went up Wednesday morning. We had staff there all night providing food and drinks to, our first goal is first the rescue workers. And then we were there for many of the victims and their families. Then we have a whole disaster services program that comes to our headquarters in Dallas. And so
Okay.
then we set up a plan, because we had an incredible amount of support from the Austin community saying, how
Right.
can I help? What can I do? We sent volunteers up there. We had a big 2-day disaster relief in Austin working with the Red Cross Capital Area Food Bank. And so we collected many items and money and resources for that area.
But the coordination was through the Army, as I recall, to a large extent.
Right, but we did work with the other organizations, and many times we all have our different areas. Our first goal is the food and refreshments, and then we went more into helping with the spiritual counseling if we had to help with any funerals,
Right.
and kind of reached out in that way.
I think we ought not to let any more time go by without putting your number up on the monitor. People are going to be looking at this and are going to say, you know, how can I learn more about what you're doing? And there it is. Am I reading it correctly? Is 476-1111
The ones to call.
are the ones to call. Oh, now that's clever. And I'll bet you did get quite a number of calls, don't you?
We get amazing calls, not only from people in need, but we really have to thank the Austin community. During the holiday season, which we say is from October through December, we roughly get 60 to 90 calls a day. People saying, what can I do? How can I help? Because really, I think people are very generous. They want to know the resources. And it's nice because we work with the other organizations, so we also know what some of their needs are if we fill up an event.
Tell us about the Lower Colorado River Authority. I read that in your newsletter, that they've been particularly helpful as far as volunteers are concerned.
They've been an incredible resource since 1992, and they have always been a partner with Salvation Army. They helped one of our first sponsors for our Angel Tree, which provides clothing and toys and food for families at Christmas. And what I found working with them is if we call and we say we have a need, they jump in and they mobilize. They're volunteers. They're a very community-minded organization.
Built-in system there, sounds like.
They do. Well, they've helped anywhere from disaster relief, and we had the floods of 93, 94. They worked with, I think there are 10 or 11 sites. They all generated items that we needed, which was food and household
Well, what
items.
about the churches? What are they doing to help you?
The churches are wonderful. We have many groups that come down and serve meals, because we serve more than 550 meals a day. So we have a lot of the youth groups, high school groups that come down, which is a great way for them to see what we do. We have others that sponsor activities, whether it's parties. They collect toiletry items for us. They have baby infant drives where they collect items for our infant room. So we've really tried to make an effort in the last few years to go out and speak with different churches. I've spoken with different outreach groups within the different churches, just so they become aware of what we're doing. Because they're faced with many of the same population that we are, and they want to have the answers.
You know, Major, as I hear Karen talk, I sense some, just a bit of enthusiasm there for what she's doing.
Well, Karen is very enthusiastic, and I don't know if she would like for me to mention this, but I will anyway, that tomorrow is her last day with us.
No kidding.
And she's going to be moving on to other horizons, and we're going to miss her a
Oh,
great
really?
deal.
Where are you going?
I'm not sure, just ready to look for some new challenges, but the Army's also always going to have a special place in my heart.
You're just making a transition in your life then? Oh, my word.
She's going to be very difficult to replace.
Yes, I would imagine.
We said it'll be much quieter at the office with me gone.
Yeah, well, you do a marvelous job of interpreting what the Army is about, and I'm sure you will miss her.
Yes, I will.
But I think it is our role here to wish you not just the very best, but God's blessing as you make that transition. And we have less than a minute. William Booth, the founder of this organization.
Absolutely.
What year?
1876.
Okay. And
if I could just very quickly say and remind the folks that when William Booth started the Salvation Army, he really did not have in mind a big social service agency. It was a religious work and spiritual work, and the Army has tried to stay true to that calling throughout the years, that our spiritual work is very important to us.
All right. I think that's a good note to end on, and I want to thank you, Major Robert Taylor, for being with us and for being in Austin.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Karen Dix, blessings on you.
Thank you.
And thank you again for being with us and for all of your service to Salvation Army and to the community. Thank you, folks, for watching. Join us next week on Austin Faith Dialogue.